Hey guys, so for today's video, some of you guys might not be interested in it, but that's fine. You can just like click out of the video. I'm gonna be talking about the fourth dimension and deja vu. So most of this video and like how I came up with this concept aren't my ideas. I'm not that fucking smart. I'll link the videos. There are 2 videos in the description. It's how to imagine the 10th dimension, and there's like a 10-minute version, and then there's like the hour and a half version, I think, an hour and 50 minutes. Both are amazing. I'm really interested in like space and time and like a bunch of different dimensions. I think it's all really interesting. So if you guys like that, you should check it out. So basically, in this video, it starts out with how you should imagine like the dimensions up to like the ones that we can comprehend, I should say. As you know, we live in the 3rd dimension. Everything around us is in 3D. We can see in 3rd dimensions. Like I can see length, width, and depth of an object. And they talk about the 4th dimension as time, but since we only live in the 3rd dimension, we can't perceive it in its entirety. So before we get into that, they do an explanation explaining like how we only perceive it in parts, and I'll draw kind of what they drew. They said to imagine a face on a playing card, like a king or a queen. And he said, the guy who narrates it was saying like, we'll call these flatlanders. They live on the card. They only live in the 2nd dimension. All they see is 2nd dimension. They can only comprehend 2nd, 1st dimension. Just like we can only comprehend 3rd, 2nd, 1st. So they use the example of if a flatlander who can only see in 2 dimension and below were to see a 3-dimensional balloon. They'd see the balloon, but they wouldn't see it in its entirety. So I'm gonna draw it out first. All right, guys, so basically, since the flatlanders live in 2 dimensions, quick pause. I'm holding this with my hand, so I'm sorry if it's shaky. Since they live in 2 dimensions, they're not gonna see the balloon's depth at all. So like when they first see the balloon, it's just a little dot, which is like the front of it. And actually I'm gonna do another visual just because I have a hard time understanding things. So this is a waterfall, okay? And it's slanted because we're not looking straight at the waterfall. You're standing parallel to the waterfall in like, let's say a pool of water, little fish. That fish really isn't important. Now let's say someone else is standing behind the waterfall and they're gonna push a balloon through the backside out the front. And since you're standing parallel to the waterfall, you will only be able to see the face of the balloon. That's it. You have to think of it like, kind of like that. They don't see depth, so the way that this shape, this is the full balloon, by the way, isn't gonna be how we see a balloon. So you have to kind of imagine a balloon without depth. So when they first see it, they're just gonna see a little dot, which is like the front of the balloon. And then as the balloon gets closer, it'll get bigger. And then once it's about like halfway to them, or I guess like halfway through the waterfall, you'll see the full outline of the balloon. And then as it like gets closer to them, it's gonna shrink until it's nothing but a dot, which is like the back end of the balloon. So for me, because I'm a little slow at times, it took me a couple times to watch over that part until I could visualize it and understand what they were saying. And I hope I did an okay job at explaining it, because I suck at explaining. So that is how, like, that is to show that while you can see the other dimensions and how they work, you won't, like, you cannot grasp the entirety. You will never be able to see the full thing, as we don't live in that dimension. So let's say the 4th dimension is time, and there's a whole argument that time is a construct and like it's not real, but I'm not talking about minutes and seconds and hours. I'm talking about the passing of time. So because we live in the 3rd dimension, we don't experience it in its entirety. Sorry, I just repeated myself. We experience it as like right now, what you're watching, that's happening right now. And you don't know what I'm about to say next because it happened in the future. But what I've said in the past, you already know because you've seen it clearly. And the way they do it is really interesting theory and concept. I'm in love with it. Okay, so this is my rendition of the graphics that they use in the video that are in my description. So they say that if we were able to perceive it in its entirety, it wouldn't be moment from moment. It would kind of all be happening at once. They would say, like, all right, well, you're here, but at the same time, if you look one way, you'd be able to see every moment that's ever happened up until the day you were born. And if you look the other way, you'd be able to see every moment that ever will happen until the day you die. And if you guys have ever seen Donnie Darko, they kind of have a similar concept to this in a way, where, like, he's got that, like, undulating worm thing that's going on. Don't really want to say too much, because that's a great movie and you should watch it. After I watched this, I got to thinking, and I was like, all right, well, like they were talking about the Flatlanders, they only get it in bits and pieces. So I get that we experience time in, like, moment-to-moment formats. But what if we had a little bit more than just moment-to-moment formats as our little chunk that we can get? I have experienced deja vu so many times, as most people have. For those of you who don't know what deja vu is, it's a sensation that, like, you're doing something and you feel like it's already happened before. Well, what if it has? So, if you look at this drawing, back to the drawing I did, let's say a couple days, you're sitting, yes. I don't know how to visualize it. I can't really, I guess. So I'm just gonna try and explain it. So stick with me. So I think the first time I ever experienced deja vu, I was in elementary school, and I remember sitting at my lunch table, eating string cheese, and feeling like just having deja vu. And I don't think I'd ever had it before. If I had, I didn't remember it past, or before that point. And it was, like, a very big thing. I was so confused as to what it was. And I thought I had, like, a dream. I thought I was dreaming. It was so strange. And, now that I had watched this video, it gets me thinking, like, okay, so it's basically telling you that if you can perceive the fourth dimension in its entirety, everything that has happened and ever will happen will all be happening at once. There's no past, present, future. It is all happening at the same time. So since we're in the third dimension, we don't experience it like that. We only get bits and pieces. So when you feel like something has already happened, it's because it has. But we can't experience it we don't experience it like we would if we were living in the fourth dimension. So when we get that feeling, like I said, that it has already happened, it's because it has. But, we don't take it in like that. And it's kind of the same thing with, like, intuition. Like, if you're doing something and you're like, this doesn't feel right, like I shouldn't be here, or when you know something bad is about to happen and then it happens, this is where it comes from. It's because the event that's going to take place very shortly after you get that feeling has already happened before, but we don't know that it's happened because we can't experience it like that. And I know what I'm trying to say, but I'm worried that I know I suck at explaining things. I really hope this makes sense. You don't have to be like, oh, I agree with that. I just want you to be like, oh, I understand what she's trying to say. I think it's really interesting. We shall see if it's actually true. Yeah, that was my little take on the fourth dimension and how we perceive time. Let me know if that made sense to you guys. I don't know if you could follow. I've got like 500 IQ, so, All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.